Welcome, viewers. We are back to On the Ropes podcast. I'm your host, Shakil Rashid, aka Ringside Shaq, alongside Sully, Salman Sadiq. And we are going to recap back to the weekend's big action at the OVO Hydro in Glasgow, where it was Josh Taylor up against Jack Catterall for the unified light welterweight titles. So as we go into this, we want to start off initially with the immediate reaction. And my immediate reaction was robbery with a big R, because I don't know about you, Suleiman, but I saw a major change in the wins of that division after the 12 rounds were done, and I was just absolutely shocked that my man from Chorley didn't get it.
I was the same. I was shocked. I thought CATTERALL had won it comfortably. I mean, I didn't think it was the biggest robbery I'd ever seen, but I thought he clearly won the fight, especially after the knockdown and Josh Taylor getting a point knocked off. I think it was in round 11, wasn't it? I think at that point I was like, unless Taylor gets a knockout here, it's clearly CATTERALL's clearly won this fight. But like I said, I didn't have it like as the biggest robbery I'd ever seen. Like, for example, I'd say the Triple G Canelo, the judge who had that fight 10 rounds to 2 to Canelo, the first one. That was worse. I thought Mayweather Canelo, for example, that was a draw. The one judge who gave that a draw, I'd say that was even worse. So it wasn't the worst kind of robbery I'd seen.
I tell you what I say it though.
I thought CATTERALL had clearly won the fight by, say, like 3-4 points. That's how I had it.
Yeah. But that's the thing though. Like when we're talking 3 to 4 point gap in between, one of the scorecards was 3 to 4 point gaps in between. It was Ian John Lewis's scorecard, but for guess who? For Taylor, not for CATTERALL. For Taylor.
Yeah.
And that was a shocker. That was why I felt like, what is going on here? I mean, BBOC and all referees associated, all qualified under the BBOC. They got, we've got to start questioning this, because it was just outrageous. I mean, we know they're qualified to do the job, and we all respect adjudication at its finest, but I'm telling you now that it was outrageous. It was quoting people on the night, embarrassing to some degree, because I couldn't really see what they were seeing on that, or maybe there is genuine error from the collection of the scorecards, that we generally have a genuine error here, but the investigation will go as far as where the BBOC get involved, and the BBOC are the people who put everything together in the first place, alongside the sanctioning body. So we've got a major conspiracy on our hands there to some degree. But I say conspiracy very lightly. Boxing's been known for this for a long time.
I think they are looking into it, though. They are actually looking into it. I believe the British Boxing Board of Control. So I think it is being investigated. That's my point. Is that the investigators are the same people. It's the BBOC. Mm-hmm. So really, I don't know how we're going to get to those lengths of real justice here, but we're going to get an answer either way. Once the fallout's been kind of analysed better. But speaking of the fallout, anyway, we're here to dissect it as much as we can. So let's go into now that we've gone to the immediate reactions. I think reflecting on your scorecards, did you have a look at it? Did you have a look at the fight against Sully? What did you make of it this time, really going into depth, as if you were, a judge yourself? What was your scorecard? Yeah, so obviously with there being like such massive controversy surrounding the judge's decision, I've rewatched the fight and scored it round by round. And actually, and when I've scored it, what I've done is I've tried to be as generous as possible to Taylor. So any round where I felt it's a close round, or in boxing as it's referred to as a swing round, where it was quite a scrappy round, it's hard to really kind of give it either way. I've given it to Taylor. So I've scored it bearing in mind that I've given Taylor the best possible score I could. So should we go through this round by round? Do you want to just compare what we've done round by round? Okay, so
I think given that I'm looking at it from a controversial perspective, I'd like to put my mind at ease that my judgment can be looked upon as if, like, you know what, that is somewhat in the ballpark area. So I definitely think we need these scorecards reflected.
Exactly. I just want to see, is the massive controversial reaction actually justified or not? So
exactly.
Yeah, so let's go through. Have you got your scorecard handy there, Shaq?
I do, yeah.
So what have you got for round one then?
Round one for me was a Catterall round. Make it 10-9 Catterall.
Yeah, same. Catterall 10-9. I think he clearly won that round. He hit him with the left hand early on. He rocked him.
He did, yeah.
Established his jab. He out jabbed him pretty well in that round. I think there was no controversies. Clear Catterall round one. Cool. Round two.
Again, Catterall again dominating that one for me. He was very, very analytical with the jab. I think he
jabbed his head off. I think, yeah.
I think he assessed the distance very well. I think his initial stance was really much, to be kind of on the outside, keep on the back foot. Very much interesting though to see that he was like standing straight on to Taylor. He wasn't putting any sort of kind of like side to side movements as much as I thought he would. But it actually worked out in his favor, because I feel the imposing size of Taylor was looking to kind of dominate on the inside, and put on very much a telephone box kind of style of fighting. We couldn't see him get in there as much, and that's what Taylor couldn't do as much. So I felt like Catterall really had this fight going really well at that point, just because of the sense that he had the distance worked out well from a very early part of the fight. 10-9 Catterall for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it was, again, it's funny because I think some people thought this round was quite close, but when I rewatched it and scored it, I didn't see any way in which Taylor could have won that fight. The only shots he was landing were on the back of his head. So, I mean, they're non-scoring shots as far as I'm concerned. Apart from the shots on the back of the head, he landed very, very little outside of that, and Catterall pretty much controlled and dominated the round with his jab. So I went 10-9 Catterall round two. Round three.
Yes, again, I think that Catterall won that again. So it was 10-9 for me to Catterall. At this point in the fight, he started to like switch up a little bit more. He was speaking to Jamie Moore between rounds, kind of getting a good feel for how the plan would go on from here. I think he took on numerous attempts and opportunities to get to the body. He did execute the body shots well. And I think that really kind of took the wind out of the sail, or eventually was building up to taking the wind out of the sail for Taylor, who was really trying to move in and kind of double up, triple up the jabs to then put him onto the ropes, where he needed to really kind of, get some more positive luck around, kind of imposing the figure that he is on Catterall. And that's what you generally do. I mean, you can't go toe to toe in the middle when Catterall's generally off the back foot. So get him on those ropes, get him cornered up, and try and work your way on the inside. And still it didn't work for Taylor. And I was just shocked that even after 3 rounds, Taylor undisputed at this point, pound for pound, couldn't get in there. He was really made to look like a bit of a novice at certain times. It felt like he was the challenger, as opposed to Catterall, who definitely assessed him after the Ramirez fight, took his time, and this the time was paying off for Catterall very much. These early rounds, Catterall's.
You know what Catterall was doing really well in there? He was slipping and ducking under Taylor's jab, and just tying him up extremely well.
I was absolutely
impressed. Every time they got close where Taylor wanted to put some work in, he just smothered him and just didn't allow the Taylor. I think he was actually struggling with the southpaw, that kind of shoulder roll southpaw stance of Catterall, because the left hand, he was just, he was hitting his shoulder all night long. And so great defensive work from Catterall. I have to say, I was very, very impressed. But I actually give this round to Taylor. Now, I had the round I had it as a close round. So again, this was one of the rounds I had as a swing round. So I can see an argument for Taylor, and I can see an argument for CATTERALL. And as I said, I'm trying to score this as generously as possible for Taylor. But I think he could just about say that he outworked CATTERALL.
Why do you want to be so generous to him? Why?
Just because look, I'm trying to say, look, what's the best possible scorecard for Taylor here? You know, to see, and also look, I'm not being generous. Well, I'm being a little bit generous, but I'm saying there's an argument there, basically, that why you could give Taylor that round. And the argument in this round was that he outworked him. I think he was just about outlanded CATTERALL in this particular round, but neither of them actually landed that many clean shots in this round, from what I saw. So therefore, yeah, it was a close round. You could make an argument either way. I'm going to give it to Taylor because, as I said, I want to see what the best possible score could be for Taylor. So round 3, 10-9 Taylor for me.
A little bit shocked with that, man. I couldn't see it at all. I couldn't see him doing anything in those early rounds. And when I saw it again, geez, man, he really wasn't imposing himself. And as I said, just second best. I'm sorry, but
I mean, fair enough. As I said, I can see the argument either way. So I'm not going to kind of argue too much with that. If you've got it with CATTERALL, no problem. But for me, I had it as a close one, and I'm going to give it to Taylor just.
So Liam mistook you for a top-rank executive then. Carl Moretti's right-hand man. Just knows how to get the judges in the right frame of mind.
No, look, I've tried to be as neutral and fair as possible when looking at this. I've not been biased at all. I've just kind of looked at it and seen it for what it is, and that's how I saw it.
Yeah, I hope he and John Lewis heard that as well. But the next round, bro.
Round 4.
I think you can start this one off again.
Round 4. I think there's no doubt that round 4 CATTERALL, no question for me. He outlanded him and landed the more cleaner, effective shots in that round. I think he clearly won round 4 for me.
For me, agree. I think he was a 10-9 winner there. His combination shots picked up quite a lot, and I didn't. It wasn't actually built up from necessarily from the kind of anything being received on his end from Taylor. I think he generally started to pick up the tempo now. I think more was and the cornermans were kind of saying to him, like, we're gonna really kind of step up to him now. Let's put him on gas and see where he goes from here. So CATTERALL really just generally has executed a plan from round 1 on, and it's coming off beautifully for me. Looking from this side, looking from the angles that I saw him at, he generally timed his shots well. The accuracy was perfect, given that he was on sort of a back foot and he was edging away with head movement, kind of pulling back. He was just setting up the trigger at each time, and he was trying to kind of torpedo his way in. Had similarities, dare I say it, of Brooke Porter all those years ago back in Carson, California, where he generally had, the away man plan of, like Kell Brook did, where he was kind of coming in and allowing the imposer to impose himself. Whereas as that was happening, I think the no-tell Kell kind of style came through. He just picked up the jab and then accurately hit that straight down the pipe. Every time CATTERALL was doing that, it generally worked. Generally worked really well. Taylor did show signs then at a point of raising up the tempo, trying to build up the head movement. But I still think his inside work was not coming off in the same way that he did against, Ramirez, who's a fortified 140-pounder. And he's a certified 140-pounder for that matter. And it just somewhere on the line, I think that. The pre-game warm-up for Taylor and build-up for Taylor was starting to show.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Brook Porter comparison there. Actually, I think I completely agree with that. The way he was kind of timing him as he was coming in with the 1-2, especially, was so effective all night long. It was tagging him with the 1-2. I was a little bit disappointed with how Taylor just wasn't adjusted to that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And also the body shots as well. He was really like the left hook to the body in particular was landing time and time and again, and you could see there was solid shots. And Taylor, like, obviously he didn't like them. You could see his reaction to them, and he was definitely getting to him with them body shots. But yeah, round 4, CATTERALL, I think no question. Round 5, what you got?
It was still for me CATTERALL's game, CATTERALL's fight, CATTERALL's round. 10-9 for me again. I think that the tempo again was starting to really kind of heat up then in 5, and I think it generally kind of mimicked round 4 at the same time again, where I think CATTERALL really kind of, put himself in the right positions in the ring. He took the counter game to another level, really kind of reeling in the bait that was Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor really again could not impose himself in the same way that I've seen him do in previous fights. In fights that he generally, you could argue it was stiffer opposition as well. I mean, you look at Prograis and you look at Ramirez, those two definitely really brought the game to him at the same time, which helped. I mean, I think with Ramirez, he generally was looking, he was generally looking to be an aggressor just as much as Taylor was. But with Prograis, I think Prograis really wanted to time him just like CATTERALL did. But Taylor had it figured out in some areas, some angles. Here, I think Taylor just couldn't suss it out, or he was always second best. And I still felt from the 4th round and prior, that was still running in that round 5. CATTERALL for me.
He just couldn't figure out CATTERALL's style at all. He just didn't know how to kind of get through with anything. I think we were saying earlier, as soon as CATTERALL closed the distance, he was doing a really good job of just turning his body slightly and minimizing the target, and that shoulder roll was so effective, and Taylor just didn't know how to kind of break him down or penetrate his defense. It was a really, really impressive defensive display from CATTERALL. Very impressive. So yeah, agreed. Round 5, 10-9 CATTERALL. I think again, clearly he kind of picked up from round 4. If anything, it was more of the same.
And what was also starting to like really kind of emerge was the styles were very much reverse roles for, say, both fighters. If you consider the tail of the tape of both fighters, when we're looking at the taller man, the rangier man in Taylor, you'd have thought that CATTERALL's game would have been implemented by Taylor, but really it was the roles were reversed. CATTERALL plugging that on Taylor whenever he was in the pocket, whereas Taylor wanted to be in the pocket, and I didn't get it. I just didn't understand why he needed to be in the pocket. But given that work rate of the first few rounds, the mentality, the plan sort of was fixated on trying to get in there and really kind of rough him up. And I don't know what it could have come. It could have been drawn into if Taylor was successful. But I'm telling you now, CATTERALL really played quality game for those rounds for sure for me.
Round 6.
Round 6. You go for it.
More of the same. I think CATTERALL again, round 6. No question to me, he won round 6 again. He landed the more clean, effective shots, and clearly outlanded Taylor in that round. So Taylor again was just struggling to get anything off. Just pretty much carried on from round 4 and round 5, and it was more of the same. So round 6, 10-9, CATTERALL, no question for me.
I agree with that too. I think what I saw slightly differently from 4 and 5, where I said it mimicked each other in terms of how it played out, was I felt that Taylor did rally earlier and was successful in getting to CATTERALL early in that round. He just couldn't. He couldn't complete what he started at the start of the round, and I don't think he could have dominated later on. Just he couldn't keep it going. Tempo going.
Just to confirm, that
sussed at that point, and just right at the end, I think he nicked the round. It was a 10-9 round to Catterall, but I would probably want to say on this one that Catterall definitely ended that round better than Taylor.
So you've got Catterall winning the first 6 rounds then, basically. You're giving them all 6. Just to confirm. Them all 6, yeah. Right. Well, I had it 5-1. So I mean, clearly we were still both of us have got Catterall dominating the first half of the fight. I think ringside they had it. I think Matthew Macklin had it 6-0, and I think the other two had it 5-1. So to be fair, having rewatched the fight, I've given Taylor 1 round, just about. Okay, So right, moving on then, Shaq. Second half of the fight, round 7. How you got that?
We're going on to round 7 now, and I feel that the fight did eventually then take a turn towards Taylor. I think Taylor, for me, did eventually get that round, just simply because what he was working on throughout the prior rounds had bear fruit in this round, particularly imposing himself in areas where I think Catterall was a little bit off the gas. And it did show at times where, shines of the inside work with short hooks, a couple of uppercuts, and pushing Catterall to corners where he didn't want to be in was on show in round 7 for me. Josh Taylor.
Same. I actually had Taylor round 7. I thought he stepped up his aggression in this round. I think he realized he got dominated the first half of the fight, and he needed to kind of step it up now. And he came out a lot more aggressive and just landed landed the more cleaner shots and outlanded Catterall in that round. So yeah, agreed to Taylor's round 7. Now round 8. I mean, I could go with round 8.
With that aggression, just on that one, Sully.
Yeah.
Or just on that round 7 round as well. I have to say though, as well, at the same time, I don't think that it was Taylor imposing himself was there, but it was a little bit scrappy in my viewpoint. Looking back, it wasn't
always effective. Agreed. It wasn't always effective.
It wasn't as
effective. Just better. It was just slightly better than previous rounds.
Yeah.
And
we all know
that by no means was he. By no means had he figured him out. It was just purely the case of he came out throwing more punches and was more aggressive, and some of them landed fairly well. Not too many, but it was just more. It was just more than what Catterall had to offer in that particular round. That was it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. It wasn't particularly effective aggression, but it was an increased and improved aggression, and that just about won in the round for me. So round 8. Now this was an easy round to score because obviously Catterall knocked him down. So that's a 10-8 round. I don't think there can be any arguments there.
Nope, I'm not arguing with that. I think that was the same for me. I mean, from what was happening from round 7, it literally just fell apart on its feet. For Taylor, I think he did as the manner in which he was knocked down.
He was hurt bad. He was hurt bad from the
work he was putting in. The work he was putting in previous rounds, and then the success he got from the 7th was then implemented in the 8th. He then had. I think he had just prior to the knockdown, he had a shot that was slightly wrapped around the back of Catterall's head as Catterall came in for to avoid it, and then just kind of get stuck up close to Taylor. Well, whilst then just pulling back and setting him up very well, and I think he did that in good composed fashion. I did see like a slightly dubious left hook coming in as Taylor was on his knee, which I didn't like, but eventually was not. I think nonetheless it was kind of like waved away as Taylor come back to his feet. But again,
he was following through with his combination. I don't think there was anything malicious in that. Yeah.
No. It was literally in that point in time where he's literally like putting the shots together.
Yeah.
And I think he was a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that he got a back to the head shot again. But nonetheless, he won that round quite well.
Cool. Okay. Round 9.
How'd you have it, Sully? I think
right. So I've actually given this round to Taylor. Again, I thought he just outworked CATTERALL slightly in this round and just about outlanded him, and probably landed just the more effective punches in the round. CATTERALL, I think at this point, was kind of getting his second, in the process of getting his second wind, and I think I think he was feeling the pace of the fight a little bit, and I give that one to Taylor. Round 10-9, Taylor.
Surprise, surprise, Willie. I said the same thing, man.
Okay.
I literally had Taylor.
Pretty similar so far.
Got a similar one going on here. I smell an interesting points total there that could mimic mine.
I think the last 3 rounds is where it's interesting for me, though.
Yeah, I think you're right there as well.
Because obviously that's where we had the point deductions, didn't we?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Fine. So cool.
Capping that off, then I think for me, Taylor won that. I think it was again another little scrappy, imposing round for him in his favour. There was a clash of heads at one point as well, which probably sort of phased CATTERALL out of that from and probably wanted to kind of end that round on a note where he can get back to Jamie Moore, start replaying the plan again. So 10-9 Taylor.
Yeah, agreed. Right, so we're on round 10.
Round 10, obviously a controversial round for me and everybody that watched it fight. I had this for Taylor. Taylor had the again a more scrappy attitude to that round, but delayed holding from CATTERALL caused him to get the Marcus McDonald point taken off him.
Yeah,
it was a little bit tight on him because I think he's having to push him back, and he's having to take him into have to put from what he did in that prior round. Taylor winning that round the way he did. I think CATTERALL's tactic after that was to basically kind of keep him held for too long, and it was a bit too uncomfortable for McDonald to adjudicate, so he had to take the point off him.
I mean, to be fair, he had given him warnings beforehand, so it wasn't it wasn't kind of like out of the blue where it's just taken. He had given him warnings, so
usually when you see that, I mean, in the previous
can't
rounds,
complain too much.
Yeah, you don't kind of continue on in that same vein. It was the problem is that when someone when your opponent starts to identify you're making these you're making threats to get a point deducted off it, he will then aggravate that even more to get you in that position to drop a point. Taylor did that very well, and as much as I don't want to kind of argue that a game plan should be based on kind of throwing off your opponent in such a manner, it got to him on that occasion, and it was starting to build up in a way that Taylor could kind of squirm through this. Maybe he definitely needed a knockout at this time, but still he was trying to get himself back in that.
Just to be momentum. So you gave the round to Taylor, but CATTERALL had a point knocked off, so you're saying that was 10-8 to Taylor then for you?
Yeah, because I think there wasn't enough work rate from him as well. If we go back to round 9 again,
okay,
it was similar to round 9, but what I'm seeing from CATTERALL was that he was actually holding on a lot more because of the after effects of round 9 where the tempo was higher. Josh Taylor's imposing stance and imposing kind of boxing at that point in time was taken over. CATTERALL's, I felt in that round, CATTERALL was deciding to kind of use some rough ass tactics to keep him in that spot and kind of maybe disable his ability to like kind of get his shots up.
It's fair. Can't really argue with anything there. I had it as a very scrappy round this round, and I actually put this down as a swing round, meaning it could have really gone either way. And I could accept either scoring it either way or scoring it a draw. Again, I think Taylor might have just about outworked him and perhaps outlanded him in that round, meaning that I'd also give the round to Taylor. Plus, with CATTERALL having a point knocked off, that means for me it's a 10-8 Taylor round, round 10. so we pretty much had it the same all the way through, apart from one round so far, which is quite interesting. Obviously, I don't know. We don't know how each other has scored the fight up until this point. Is the first time
this
we've
is all
gone
done on the blind side.
I haven't got a clue what you've done, and you haven't got a clue what I've done. So it's quite interesting to see that we've rewatched it and almost had it the same so far. All right, so round 11 then. What are we saying for round 11?
Round 11 was, and again, a controversial one for me. I literally had it for. I think I'd had it for Taylor at that point. Up until about 2.5 minutes, and then strange things at this point in time when the round happened. Point gets taken off for Taylor.
It was right at the end of the round, wasn't it? Because I think at the end of the round, he hit him with a punch after the bell or something.
It wasn't needed. Yeah, it was petulant.
It was after the bell. It was late. It was intentional, and that was he deserved it. To be fair, you can't do that.
He did deserve it.
Now, so sorry. So how are you scoring the round then? So did you have Taylor winning the round itself?
Yeah, because I had Taylor winning the round, I actually scored it 9-9.
9-9. I had it exactly the same. I also had it 9-9. Taylor winning the round, but the point not knocked off, meaning that it then became a 9-9 round.
It was the worst way to lose that, to draw that round. Worst way to do it. Absolutely.
And then, because you know what? So how did you have round 12 then?
Round 12, I had Taylor for that. Taylor just kind of edging it for me on that one.
He came out aggressive in that round, didn't he?
He had to do what he had to do. He had to just run the gas tank out and, put everything into that. I think CATTERALL really just had to, at that point in time in the fight, I think you can consider yourself, if you're CATTERALL, to be really much up on the cards. I think he didn't stray away from his game plan, but I generally thought his output at that point in time was just to see it through. So Taylor being the aggressor, I gave it Taylor.
Same, I gave it Taylor. He came out aggressive. You could tell he knew he needed a big round. I'm pretty sure he got told in his corner that he needed a knockout to win. And he obviously came out and kind of put it on CATTERALL. He didn't really actually get hit him with too much, but he did more. Essentially, he worked more than CATTERALL and landed more shots, so therefore he gets the round. I don't think CATTERALL was actually in trouble at any point in the fight. He was always comfortable and very composed. I was really, really impressed with how he handled the occasion as well. Obviously, being in Scotland, and in that hostile atmosphere. I mean, the Scots when they
only had about 2,000 people in the arena that night.
Yeah.
So really didn't know, how the fanfare was for him.
It's a hostile environment.
He just heard the Scottish guys just getting leery and getting crazy out there, just rooting for Taylor. I think it was probably at the round 8. I think it was at the round 8 where, even though Taylor got knocked down in that round, he just rallied a little bit at the end, and the crowd was just sort of hyping off that. And I just felt like, well, not cool, man. I mean, if everybody's watching that from here to New York City, it was on ESPN Plus as well as Sky Sports. They're not going to think that way. They're just going to look at that. Well, okay, I sense the stinker here. There's a lot of the crowd hype going on here. It's in his backyard. We know historically what happens when home advantage gets to play in part here. But as I said, I made a comparison to Brooke Porter. Brooke Porter was a neutral ground for both, technically. Because Porter was fighting out of Vegas at that point. Cal, obviously, from Sheffield. I think if we go back to, say, if we went to the Ice Arena back in, I think it was 08 or 09 World Boxing Super Series, we had Andre Durrell, Carl Froch. I think we had crucial moments in that fight where, I would consider Froch not even winning one of the rounds. He was still rallied on by the Nottingham faithful. And it was just a similar way here, Taylor. I just felt
wasn't Froch on his knees?
Froch.
Wasn't Froch on his? Sorry, did you say Froch Taylor? Oh, okay, yeah.
No. So no. I'm saying Froch Durrell, yes. But I'm saying there has been notable comparisons between the demeanor and the character of Josh Taylor and Carl Froch. People are saying that Taylor is a Carl Froch style boxer or persona, as they say. So it was funny that the way that Froch actually fought in that fight against Darrell being the away man, it did shout similarities, and when the hype train does help you along the way and does cause some theory to believe that there could be something really weird going on here in this fight, and the outcome of this fight.
So what's your final score then, Shaq? I think
final score as I had it is now on screen now. I had it at the end.
114, 111.
Catterall win. 114, 111 to Jack Catterall.
Right, okay. So
and for me, that kind of rings out as pretty much what should have been.
I had it 113. I had it 113, 112 to Catterall, because I actually gave him the third where you didn't. So and that's where the 2 point difference comes in.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people would probably have different opinions about that third round, but it was just for me that the rhythm, if a rhythm's there, then that kind of justifies the way that the fight went a little bit more. And I've seen it in previous fights. But you can't really get these kind of jumpy, kind of it goes one way, it goes the others, unless it's generally between, two contenders, maybe a unification match. You see those points coming through, or that point pattern coming through at least anyway. But with Taylor Catterall, it was surprising to see such a shutout for 6 rounds for me. Just generally, Catterall had the game plan working. I think Jamie Moore's and Catterall's team, his whole team, including anybody that was there from his time prior to Ramirez fight with Taylor, they've done an absolutely phenomenal job with Jack Catterall. That fight really did play out in the first 6 rounds massively in his favor.
Shaq, remember that I scored the fight as generously as possible as I could to Taylor. So there were actually, I had 3 swing rounds in there where I could have potentially given him to Catterall as well. And if I'd done that, then the scorecard would have been a lot different. It wouldn't have been 113, 112. It would have then been a 4 point gap instead of a 1 point gap. So I'm saying I had it 113, 112 to Catterall, which is exactly what one of the judges, in fact, had it in the official judges. One of them had it 113. I think it was Howard Foster that had it, same as you. So scoring it in the most favourable way to Josh Taylor, I had it the same as him. 114 to 111 to Taylor is just impossible for me to see that. I just cannot see that for the life of me. I mean, that is a pretty shocking scorecard. But having 1 point, Shaq, it's not a great, is that robbery? Would you say that's a robbery? 1 point,
I would say that the robbery didn't come. No. I think Howard Foster's card was actually a point in favor of Catterall. No robbery there for me.
Yeah.
Ian John Lewis 114 to 111 to Taylor. I mean, how did he get to that? That would have.
That's a shocker. That was a shocker. Yeah.
All of the point. Yeah. I mean, if we had to just go on a basic pattern that I, basically taking mine and applying that to Taylor as opposed to Catterall, that's the only really kind of justification I can get in terms of how that pattern played out. But it really wasn't Taylor that actually played out that way.
But what I'm saying in terms of a robbery, so look, best case scenario for me is is Catterall winning 113, 112. Best case scenario for Catterall would be him winning 116, 109, because the 3 of the rounds I could go the other way if I wanted to. So either way, Catterall's winning the fight, no matter how I'm scoring it, whether I'm being generous to Taylor or whether I'm not. Catterall's definitely winning the fight. Now, in terms of the actual reaction to the fight and the way people were kind of screaming robbery, I think for me, part of it comes down to the fact that, look, it was a good fight and Catterall won it, but I don't see it as as big as a robbery as everybody's making it out to be. I think ultimately it was a reasonably close fight that Catterall clearly won. Like if you get what I'm saying, I think for me, Josh Taylor still won probably at least five rounds out of the 7. But obviously, the knockdown makes a difference, doesn't it?
And look, I mean, I can really, as I say, I can really agree with your line of thinking anyway. I mean, it kind of similarly mimics Howard Foster's view of the fight. Victor Loughlin, I did it the other way around to yours, to your point.
Like, I had Triple G beating Canelo more convincingly in their first fight than I had CATTERALL beating Taylor in this one, for example. Like, I had Mayweather beating Canelo more convincingly than CATTERALL beat Taylor in this one as well.
Really, so, you cannot. When you're robbed of the real system of breaking that fight down, and basically I'm saying that's a robbery by how one of the referees he came to the same totals as me, but for the wrong fighter. That clearly is that clearly is a thief in disguise, isn't it, in terms of like adjudicating that.
I still feel that, you know what,
you could say the same for Victor Loughlin, as I say. I mean, I argue with Victor Loughlin's scorecard as well. It was mimicked yours. So put it this way, two of the refs that were adjudicating that fight, Ian John Lewis mimicked mine for the wrong fighter. Victor Loughlin's mimicked yours for the wrong fighter. But Howard Foster's mimicked yours for, in my opinion, the winner, the right winner, the winner who rightly won that fight. Now that says a lot for me on, how that, if there's that the split decision was decided basically from Victor Loughlin and Ian John Lewis, really in Taylor's favor.
At the end of the day, you have to feel sorry. You got to feel for CATTERALL. That was his
it
big
needed
chance.
To be tighter margins for me. Bottom line, if you can't say it was a robbery, then it needs to really be, a fight that was on tighter margins than it was. If you see the description of if you see the final scorecards of how that was adjudicated, that's definitely not as tight a margin as I would have expected if it was a close split decision.
When you're talking robbery,
about maybe robbery is a bit tempting with a bit fated, but still, if you're robbed, it was definitely not as close as in my definition of the robbery, it had to be a little bit wider a margin, which it was. From Ian John Lewis, and you could argue that 2 of the other refs had it tighter, which is fair enough. But the Ian John Lewis scorecard really is, for me, the wrong way around, as opposed to,
agreed.
Definitely in favour.
Totally agree. To be honest with you, he should be looked into, and there should be some kind of accountability there, because obviously you're talking about careers. You're talking about careers on the line here. You're talking about, CATTERALL, who should have really been the undisputed light welterweight world champion on that night. And it's
just shocking that he had rounds 2, 3, and 4. Sorry, rounds 2, 3, and 4 for Taylor. 2, 3, or 4, and one of them was your swing round. Yeah. One of them was your swing round, but to have 3 out of 4. Potentially as a swing round.
Round 4, I think clearly CATTERALL won that round. There's no way in hell you can give Taylor that round. 3, I had it close, to be fair. I had that as a swing round and I gave it to Taylor. And now 2, I know some other people had that close, but for me, I thought CATTERALL won the round. I didn't think it was much of a question for me. So 3, fine, I can accept that. 2, I mean, you're pushing it if you're giving him 2 and 3, but 2, 3, and 4, that's just a joke. That's not right. But so it's interesting.
Big respect to the fighters, man. I mean, big respect to the fighters. CATTERALL coming out on Instagram saying he fought for his family, fought for his career, devastated by the decision. You got to give these guys all due credit for bringing us an entertaining fight.
In summary, though, Shaq, was it as big as a robbery, having rewatched the fight and scored it properly, as you thought as your immediate reaction?
As I said before, the Ian John Lewis scorecard, right? If it was tied to a margin, right, in this split decision contest, right, I could then probably I would probably feel like I'm standing corrected, But the fact that he has pointed it the same way I did for the opposite fight, for the opposing fighter, in my opinion, suggests to me that it's more of a robbery. I mean, you have to breaking down his scorecard as well really doesn't add up to what I saw on Sky Sports. Really doesn't probably see. A lot of people in that arena, I mean, barring pretty strong Josh Taylor faithful probably wouldn't look at that fight in the same way as Ian John Lewis neither. And they probably would be a little bit shocked at that scorecard, if not very. It's a controversial scorecard, man. You can't take that away from this fight. You can't take that away from Jack Catterall, who really, for me, as much as people are pouring out emotion for him, it's gone to that wave where people are feeling that the boxing has gone to the corruption at its highest level now, and we can't keep continuing having this. So this is a massive fight for the undisputed light welterweight champion, and the undisputed belts. He had it all there wrapped up for me from round 6. All he had to really do after that was box and move and just keep it in his bank. Just keep it in the bank there, and he will cash the check by round 12, and he's done.
Yeah,
Taylor had it done. Taylor had it in badly. If he really covered ground from round 7 onwards, which he was about to do, barring the knockdown, it could have swung in a different.
Well, I had Taylor winning.
But even 5. Then, the scorecard for Ian John Lewis doesn't even describe that.
Doesn't add up. Yeah, it doesn't add up. Yeah. So
that's
in
why
summary,
I feel
then,
like that was controversial.
I think basically in summary, you're saying it basically was a robbery. That particular scorecard you're saying was just a joke, which I completely agree with. I'm saying that look, Catterall should have won the fight for me. I think it probably wasn't as big as a robbery I thought when I first watched it. I think it was a bit closer than I initially thought. Obviously, I gave it to Catterall by 1 point in the end. I could have given it by more if I'd been a bit more generous in a couple of the rounds. But having said that, there's an argument there for me to say Catterall only won the fight by 1 point. And obviously that suggests it's a fairly close fight. And it's not, it's not the biggest kind of, it's not the, it's not the one-sided fight that a lot of people were making out
this
afterwards.
Point as well. Yeah, I also think it comes to this point as well, Sonny, is that this what we've obviously noted it was an SD, all right, split decision, right? That and we know defining a split decision is obviously 2 refs out of 3 in favor of one fighter, right? MD. Now that I would have probably not said robbery if it was MD, because I genuinely thought that this was going towards draw on one of the judges' scorecard at least. Yeah, one of the judges' scorecard had it as a draw. Yeah, and if it then came down to the other 2 judges to call it an MD for one of the fighters, I probably would have felt that isn't that. No, maybe that does kind of ring true the fight, and it should be going to, and it is more grounds to say that this should be a rematch at some place.
Well, I think there should be. I think Catterall deserves a rematch, no doubt.
That's the point. That's why
for me, Catterall did win the fight, but I just think.
But the fact is, that's an SD.
I just don't think it was as big as a robbery as I thought when I first watched it.
If he wants to go for a rematch again, yeah, he'll look at those scorecards and think, well, yeah, okay, that doesn't explain that. That does not explain why I'm in such a hurry to get a rematch. Why I'm desperate to get a rematch. Why I feel desperately, indignified by this loss. Why I feel like my hard work and all my graft has been taken away from me. Yeah, that SD does not explain that. If it were an MD, judges were probably then kind of insinuating, oh yeah, that it was a very tight fight, and I don't think it was a genuine, real winner at that. But at the same time, if one judge had it in his favor as opposed to 2, he wouldn't have felt as hard done by as a split decision, because he knows that is then saying to him, oh, 2 out of 3 judges really going for him on that one? Really? I would have just accepted him having 1 judge, because there's always one dodgy judge at a boxing fight, especially for the champion in his home ground. That's generally what has happened in the past. But to have 2 of them on his back.
Well, you got to feel for Catterall for sure. I mean, the guy got hard done by, for sure.
Absolutely.
As I said, I don't think it's the worst scorecard I've ever seen in my life in terms of, as well as I've already mentioned, I don't think it's on the level of a Canelo Triple G where someone gave Canelo 10 rounds out of 12 in the first fight. I think that for me was a bigger joke and more of a, let's say, a robbery than this one. But it still wasn't right. And in an ideal scenario, they should reverse that decision and order a rematch. But the thing is, though, is that Josh Taylor, obviously now he's not going to stick around at 140. He said he's going to move up to 147. So even if he does give him a rematch,
he's not even going to come back now. He's got to
what's the point?
147 just to get, just to avenge the fight.
Yeah, there's not much point if the world title's on the line. So that means Catterall.
He wants to make history. Jack Catterall wants to make history. He doesn't want to actually seek retribution. This is not a massive grudge match. This was for the titles. This was for his legacy. That was for his
undisputed,
his career. It was for his undisputed career. That's what it was. Yeah, we can make it all about retribution, this, that, and the other, as much as we want to. But really, what we want to see is Crawford in with pound for pound the best fighters. That's the problem we have. It is that this wasn't the fight that was a legacy-defining fight for either one. As such, Catterall had the chance to become undisputed, which was a legacy moment. But I'm talking about a legacy fight where both fighters come in as genuine pound for pound, or has been touted as one, described as one, ranked highly as one, and has the accolades to prove it. We're not now. We're shrouded in this issue around where Taylor. Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether he's got that level of ability now. I think people are going to question whether Taylor is at that level that we expect him to be. You cannot leave the mandatories like this. You cannot have a mandatory questioning your ability to be the dominant force in your division. You cannot have that. It's just simply not on. I mean, Jack Catterall, prior to coming into this fight, what did he have? I mean, he really had ranked number one with the WBO. He was midway through, WBC, WBA, but he really came into this as a WBO contender. Yeah. He boxed his heart out. He stuck to the game plan, and he proved people and everybody who he was on that stage, and he should be given his dues. And I think that, the meritocracy of, has seriously taken a step down in the sport of boxing, that the sport we all love. I mean, we don't want to be going back and supporting Man United through these years, given what kind of controversial issues we have, in football. I mean, where am I going to go, bro? If I can't watch boxing, I can't watch my glorious Man United. I don't know who I'm going to watch anymore. I'm probably going to just jump off a cliff, man.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I mean, let's not even talk about Man United.
That's what I'm saying. Don't take my boxing away from me. Don't take my boxing away from me.
United
don't take any kind of combat sport away from me.
Yeah.
For the sake of scripting a narrative where pound for pound has to be pound for pound. If he's not pound for pound, we have to question it. He has to go back and rewrite that wrong. He really has to. Yeah? Other people have done it in the past. We need to see it in all these other divisions. We cannot simply sit back down for any kind of corruption, any kind of controversy. I mean, we've had it so many years. We've known it for years. I mean, how are we going to live with ourselves? Watching a sport that we all generally know as, simply, fans' favorite, technically gifted, star-studded, controversial for different reasons, loads of trash talk, lots of competition, lots of drive, lots of needle. We need all that again, but we need it to be in legitimate environments, and we can't have that having this.
I hear you, man.
We go through the broadcasting airwaves
until
bringing the ticket gate sales up. This is just not right.
Until there's some kind of accountability for judges, then I mean, I don't really see it changing. You're going to get these kind of these outcomes now and again. So I think there has to be more kind of, like in the same way that a fighter will get penalized or punished for doing something that's incorrect in the fight or before the fight. I think judges also need to have some kind of accountability as well, and unfortunately Catterall's been in the receiving end of a bad decision and a life-changing decision in his case. But until they start doing something about either the way they judge the fights or the way the judges are held to account, then I don't really see it being any different, unfortunately. But yeah, something has to be done. But but
well, I can only hope that Jack, kind of gets over this, and he can come again, and he can really kind of dazzle us again with a massive performance at light welterweight. I'm sure he's got business to do there. I'm sure there'll be a big fights to come. Taylor, I think he needs to now kind of take on 147 fresh, leave that out of his head now. He needs to focus now on what's in front of him. He's now got the opportunity to kind of work his way into a division and now dominate that potentially, or find a campaign in which he can then prize his way into fighting Bud Crawford, Errol Spence, Ugas, Boots Ennis.
I think Taylor should move up. I mean, Taylor looked horrible at the weigh. For me, I think he's just probably part of the reason why he was so kind of, he struggled to adjust in the fight. I mean, I just think he was just he didn't have much in him, energy wise. I think the first 6 rounds he could barely get out of the way of a shot, like as in he was really struggling. So I think he definitely needs to move up, in my opinion. I think he's just outgrown the division. But let's see what happens anyway.
Seems to be a trend with some of these top ranked fighters. I think we saw Teofimo Lopez last year when he fought George Kambosos, again undisputed at the lightweight division. He got absolutely schooled by George Kambosos after delaying the fight due to COVID. We're seeing this from a couple of top ranked fighters now. Are they badly managed? Do you feel that they're not being promoted effectively across all those divisions that they're in? I think Top Rank has. I think we've noticed. I think if you look at the welterweight landscape, I think a lot of the fighters are actually promoted by Al Heyman, PBC. It's very much been an in-house division as such. Also with junior welterweight as well. I think there've been a lot more attempts for PBC to dominate those two divisions, in terms of broadcasting and putting on promotional fights. Is this what's damning the sport right now? I mean, just total domination from promoters.
I mean, not necessarily. I think ultimately it's down to the fighter themselves, whether they want to compete in a certain weight division or not.
We're seeing like some of the fights not really being played out at the minute. I mean, like, it seems like the welterweight division, in terms of like, we're looking at Spence Ugas happening in April 16. That's Spence who has only ever really fought anybody outside of PBC when it was for Kell Brook's IBF title. We haven't seen him since actually go cross broadcasting partners to really put on a massive show. And he had a stadium fight as well, in Sheffield and Bramwell Lane, to take that off Kell Brook. Since then, Lamont Peterson, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, you've had Carlo Ocampo at one point just for a local Texan fight. Uga and his failed fight with Pacquiao, Ugas then came in to step in for. Having Pacquiao as sort of, the kind of the elephant in the room at one point for PBC, I think that kind of then shoved out anything that Top Rank were trying to work on in the background. With Crawford, after Crawford unified super lightweight, he was waiting, a good time. I think he got the WBO, given Bob Arum's connections with WBO. He got that off Jeff Warren. We really then saw, sort of pick-em fights with people in the division in the top 10. We can talk about Benavidez. With Kavaliauskas. Controversial fight that was, because I think he really he tried to impose himself on Crawford, which naturally I think a lot of fighters should be doing to even try and get a key to victory and beating Crawford is that you can get in to Crawford and just take him off the rhythm, which he always loves and does really well in, better than a lot of fighters. That's why he has got pretty much pound for pound status, because his IQ is immense. Cavalli stuff like that, and then
It's just a different beast, man. Different beast.
Yeah, and he's been having to take on British fighters after the Cavalli fight with Khan, Brook. Nothing's really been of and he had the Porter fight recently, which I felt he did very well in. But again, three of the final fights he's had, recent fights he's had at welterweight, have not been of the stature that this division actually holds. I mean, we're talking about he's missed some of the top guys in that division, not by hook or by crook, but by the nature of promotional politics. And I think it's really killing that division now. Taylor going into that division, how does that ever? That's just one more fight that he has to somewhat promote and marinate himself in order for people to want to see that fight. It's not building up to a division, or where do these fighters, we know of watching as boxing fans, we know where these fights are going to go. We're really left in limbo on this, and I think that we hope in time that this year can change our fortunes in terms of what we see as pay-per-view, or what we define as pay-per-view. But yeah, here's to me hoping and waiting, as I usually do for boxing.
You might be waiting for a while just yet, Shaq. The way it's looking, what can you say? Too many promoters, too many belts, just too many organizations involved, and unfortunately, there's the politics of it plays a big part. And as a result, we don't always in boxing, and particularly at the moment, we hardly ever get to see the fights that we want. And when they do happen, it's just often a bit too late. But yeah, as you said, you got to stay hopeful, man.
Yeah, like we do on this podcast, we put these guys on the ropes. We need to put these guys on the ropes at some point. Boxing has to be delivered properly. This has been an On the Ropes recap program. We've returned it to sender, closing the show in good fashion. Peace to you all.
Cool, man.